Hello,
We're
welcome to
live.
the many worlds of Mike Anthony. I'm Mike.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to the
Hi.
show.
Yeah. Well, what do
So,
you have for us today?
running just a few minutes late. We apologize. Got to go through a few technical hiccups, but we made it. We typically
Hmm.
want to start on the hour, though, whenever we do have live stream. So, thanks for bearing with us if you are watching out there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We
So, go ahead, Mike.
we had some gremlins in the studio, which I believe that'll be the discussion of a future review or
And they're
discussion.
talking about. Are they really talking about doing a third Gremlins? I mean, 1 and 2
I
were
think so.
fantastic, but we're talking a long time ago, and they were great.
Hmm.
Yeah,
One of
we'll
them must
see.
have got wet or something. Spoiler
don't
alert.
don't feed them after midnight.
Yeah. All
Awesome.
right. What do you have in store for us
No,
tonight, topic
no,
wise?
no. It's good. I was thinking we had a really great discussion on the MCU last week. I thought it was
We
very
did. Yeah.
very fruitful. Some good stuff. Although we definitely didn't span the entire universe, but we did cover a pretty well known, decent, good topic in my opinion. But so I kind of wanted to just taper off a little bit to the Marvel television side of things, because I believe we did mention the Punisher last week just a little bit.
Yeah.
And the Punisher actually just had, or I should say, Marvel Disney just released a standalone episode, basically, of the Punisher, which kind of was placed a little bit after the series that they had, where and before some more of the new Marvel
The
cinematic
Daredevil
universe.
Born Again. The
Yes,
Daredevil.
that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So it was, I thought it was really, really good. I'd love to kind of jump into that topic a little bit with you if you're
Mhm.
into it. But
Yeah.
um, one of the one of the things that, so as we continue to grow and learn, we still receive some pretty good feedback from viewers and whatnot. And one of the pieces of feedback that I did receive from a good friend of mine, she had said that um, it'd be nice for somebody who doesn't really know much about comics and video games and movies that we like, action, adventure, sci-fi, and whatnot. She said it would be nice because they are interested in what we have to talk about. Be nice to know a little bit about the character before, just kind of give them a
Mhm.
little bit of a explanation of what we're going to talk about, so they have a little bit better understanding. So I thought I would just
Yeah.
take a few minutes to talk about the Punisher himself, if that's okay,
Sure.
just for a few minutes.
Yeah. And
So
maybe I have a little information about who created him
yeah.
as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
Start
Sure,
us
sure.
off.
So just for everybody out there listening, the Punisher is a Marvel Comics character. He was one of these characters that debuted in another comic series. This was probably a pretty famous one. You might all know, Spider-Man. The comic was called The Amazing Spider-Man, and it was probably, I think it was issue 129 where the Punisher had his debut. So interesting. One little side note here. It's interesting how, I don't think a lot of people understand that a lot of really great comic characters didn't just come right out of the box and have their own comic book. A lot of them actually appear in several other comics before they actually end up getting their own. And this is one of those times. So they're introduced in another comic character's comic book, and then they end up having their own because their popularity,
Yeah.
rose to fame. So Fantastic Four, Amazing Spider-Man, those are two of the biggest comics. X-Men, that did that all the time. A lot of
Yeah.
characters
Like the
came.
Silver Surfer started off in Fantastic Four, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Like issue
So
49 or 50, something like that.
yeah. So the Punisher is no different, right? So it was the Amazing Spider-Man 129, I believe, and so give you a little bit of a description of what the Punisher was to Spider-Man. So Spider-Man's obviously a hero, right? And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, the character of the Punisher was probably one of the very first, at least in the Marvel universe, of what they call an anti-hero. And to give you an
Right.
idea what an anti-hero is basically, um, they do right, if you want to call it that, but they have a little bit of a different way of going about doing the right thing. So let me give you an example. There's a woman walking down the street carrying her purse. A thief comes by, snatches her purse, and runs off. Spider-Man, being a superhero, would swoop in, grab the person who robbed the purse, take the purse from them, give it back to the woman, would probably web him up pretty good and wait for the police to come and serve justice to him, right? He'd be arrested, prosecuted, processed, prosecuted, all of that stuff. Woman gets her purse back. Spider-Man goes home a hero. An anti-hero, what he would do is similar. He would grab the person who robbed the purse, take the purse, give it back to the woman, and then he would kill the bad guy. So that's kind of what an anti-hero do. So he does the right thing, but doesn't believe in justice to the extent of most heroes, what they would do, and would just kill the person. I might also throw in that he might expect maybe a reward from the person that he, gave the purse back to. Like, hey, how about, $100 for doing that for you, kind of thing. So that's kind of the premise of what an anti-hero is. So in the comic book, he actually was kind of a pain in the neck for Spider-Man, just to put it lightly. But based off of a character that is, I don't know, I think everybody fell in love with him. Frank Castle is his name, and he had some life struggles, and he basically became a vigilante. And became very, very popular, probably one of the most popular. He's very much recognized now by his symbol. I think everybody knows him, even if you don't know comic books. That's where the symbol comes from, the big skull and the big, big teeth and all that. So pretty interesting history. So.
Yeah, he was created by, a lot of us recognize some of the usual suspects who created a lot of these characters, like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, people like that. He was not created by those sort of Jack Kirby kind of, people. He was created by Jerry Conway. Now, Conway was a very established, don't get me wrong, it's just you don't hear his name mentioned with, along with Ditko and Lee and Kirby. So, but he was created by Jerry Conway, the writer, and John Romita Sr., and then Ross Andru, who was, I don't know which one was the writer or the pencil artist and which one was the inker. I think John Romita was the pencilist. These things matter to comic book people.
Yes, they do. They're important.
Regardless, those three guys created. And I wonder, to your point, whether Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would have, but I wonder if Stan Lee would have created an anti-hero. He was all about creating the good guys, the really good guys.
Yep. But that's what's so great about the Punisher and his type of character is they're a character that you kind of love, but you feel bad for loving them. You kind of want, it's a love-hate, I guess, kind of situation, because you do feel bad that he kills people, but you're like, but they're a bad person, so they deserve to die, right? Which is not that's not my moral compass in life. I just want to be very clear. I don't believe that. I think everybody deserves justice, but
and to be clear, he doesn't kill people who do minor crimes. He kills murderers.
Right. Yeah. Right. He does bad. Yeah. The bad people does bad to bad people. Yeah. So it's like an eye for an eye kind of situation. But he's also been pushed around a lot and has really been pushed to the brink on a lot of things. And I think that's why he kind of became the actual character that he is, that everybody had just kind of fell in love with. But fast forward to today, obviously he did have his own comic, still probably does. I don't follow it, but they did a couple movies. Hollywood did a couple movies kind of through the past few decades. Not a big fan of the Dolph Lundgren one, which was, the earliest one, most likely. I don't think there was one before that, but I know, Mike, you might have some words on that, but my favorite was the Thomas Jane version. I thought he was probably my favorite one. That was a very, very good movie. Frank Castle was, his family was murdered, unfortunately, and that pushed him to become the vigilante that he was to get revenge. And he ends up taking up with, a group of misfits, if you want to call them that, in the actual movie. And he ends up having to protect them because they became at risk because they were friends with him in that sort of manner. So just give you an idea of how that, it was a really good movie. If anybody wants to check that out, I would definitely suggest watching that movie. But then moving forward on, we've been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for, almost 2 decades now. And then Disney, and they started to do some TV shows, some Marvel spinoffs and some TV series. And The Punisher got one. It started out on Netflix. They did 2 seasons and they were awesome. I just absolutely love them.
They were fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. They were very, very good. Good storylines for both seasons. There was just, I don't know. If you have a moral compass in life, this is what I say. If you have a moral compass in life, but sometimes you would love to just, watch somebody just take out bad, aggression and all of that stuff, just take it out in a way, you should probably watch The Punisher. It's the movie's great. The TV shows are great. And yeah, this latest episode, which we'll dive into soon, is pretty great.
Well, it's fantasy. It allows us to feel justice and to act out those things in a fantasy world that,
right.
Whereas if it were real, so this fantasy world is all based on dreams. We talked about that in the first episode, that we have the ability to make a dream world come to life because of modern film technology. But in the real world, a person, if there were a Punisher, he wouldn't always be right about who needed to die and who didn't.
Exactly.
Like, for instance, what if someone were framed and then he killed them? Then he's as bad as they are. That's why we have a justice system, right?
Yep.
So that everybody gets to plead their case and have an attorney. Yep. But in the fantasy world of the Punisher, he's always right about who the bad guys are that he kills.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the cool struggles because the Punisher did a couple cameos he actually had a pretty main character for a couple episodes in the Daredevil series.
Right.
And, that was their struggle, right? It was the hero anti-hero struggle. It was, they were forced to kind of work together, but Daredevil did not agree with his methods of justice. And of course, the Punisher didn't agree with Daredevil's methods of justice, right? Even though they were both going after the same bad guys, the same people. And I think they both struggled, which is what made the series so great.
Yeah. Let me tell you something, Red.
That's right. I know. Yeah, he calls him Red. Yeah. He's pretty good. Look, I think, is it Barenthal? Is that his last name?
Yeah, John Barenthal. Yeah.
He is an awesome Punisher.
Shane from The Walking Dead for us who enjoyed the first few seasons of that show.
Yeah. He is an awesome character. So I think there was a great selection as far as an actor is concerned for this character. I think he fits the bill perfectly. So, Thomas Jane was great too. Don't get me wrong, but that was, a couple decades ago, but yeah, this was definitely a good choice. So yeah.
An acting depth that is necessary for a character that could be pretty one-dimensional without that level of an actor.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. So but the latest, so they had 2 seasons. Then they ended the season. There were a couple cameos in the original Daredevil series. This is all on Netflix, by the way, whenever they started. Then it transitioned over to Disney Marvel, and where Daredevil has had 2 seasons now. And Frank Castle was or the Punisher was in the first season of the Disney Marvel version. And
he wasn't a main character, but he showed up. Yeah.
Right. He showed up to help in one of the I think maybe 1.5 episodes. And then they had an end credit scene at the very, very end, if I'm not mistaken. And all it did was, spoiler alert, of course, they showed him escaping. He was captured and he escaped. And then fast forward to this standalone episode that, from what I understand, Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Before we get to that, I do want to mention, spoiler alert for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, that Daredevil and Karen Page do use the Punisher's hideout as their base of operations for a lot of that season.
Yes, that is true. Yep. Yeah. So he's not around, but the thing is, we don't know where he is. We don't know if he shouldn't be captured still, because we saw at the end of the credit scene of the first season of Daredevil, Disney Marvel Daredevil, he escaped. So, but we didn't see him in season 2 at all, which, if I'm understanding correctly, this new standalone episode that they just did, and Mike, tell me a little bit about this. This episode was fairly popular.
According to an agency that rates streaming platforms called Flix Patrol, it was this new one-shot special was the number 1 most watched title on Netflix, or not? Was it Netflix?
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, of course, because they own Marvel. Okay, so it was the number 1 most watched title on Disney Plus worldwide.
which is wild, because if you saw this episode, which I don't know what that says, I'll let everybody watch this episode, but let me say this about this episode. There really wasn't much to it. Although
Yes.
there was some depth, there really wasn't much to it. At the very beginning, you go through some emotional things. Then the emotional things are acted out. And then we close with what I feel is a solid start to a character who has come to terms with who they truly are and need to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And so, there are varying reviews out there and opinions.
Sure. Always will
But,
be.
and some did not care for the fact that there was not much of a plot. The plot is very bare bones.
Simple.
And in fact, it wasn't even as long as a regular old school Netflix episode of Punisher.
Right.
It was a short movie, so to speak, or one shot that, to your point, it tells us who the Punisher is, and I think this is what we're kind of talking about today.
Yep.
And how or does this set up Spider-Man Brand New Day? Talking about bringing it back to Spider-Man.
Just where I was
I
going.
think it does, and we can talk more about that later.
Yeah. I totally agree. This episode, whether you like the actual plot of the episode, whether you care for it or not, whatever, I think it was 100% necessary to tee him up to be as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So he's about to make that transition into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we should see him in the new Spider-Man movie, which, case in point, takes us all the way back to The Amazing Spider-Man issue 129, where he made his first appearance. I truly believe that all kind of connects. And it was just necessary. Yeah. And I believe he actually, at the end of this standalone episode, becomes the Punisher. He almost is dressed like he is in the comic at the very end of the episode, if you watch that. So, and I don't know anything further. I'm not going to listen to any critics or anything, because I want to just go in and watch the new Spider-Man movie without any knowledge of anything. I just want to watch it, in its raw. I don't want to hear, any feedback or anything. So I don't know anything else on that. I'm just speculating that they teed this up for this.
Imagine if you were a writer, and this was written by John Bernthal, the guy who plays Punisher, and I think he directed it, if I recall.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
But imagine if you were like, okay, my character is going into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, arguably the largest universe of characters in the world right now.
Yeah.
And I want people to know the gist of who the Punisher is, why he's that way, and where he is at going forward. That's all you need to do, without people having to watch two seasons of, or one season of Daredevil and 2 more seasons of Daredevil Born Again and 2 seasons of Punisher from Netflix. No, let's give people the gist of who this guy is. He is an action hero who has trauma in his past that we can talk about when we talk about the plot. And he is going to go around and clean up the streets.
Totally.
And he's not taking prisoners.
He's not playing. He's not playing everybody.
And he's a good guy because he helps people, which is we do have a character arc, if you want to start talking about the plot a little bit and going through the episode, because in the beginning there's a homeless veteran who has and spoiler alert for this whole thing, people, if you don't want to,
if you haven't seen it yet,
know what happens, don't watch this. There's a homeless man, a little dog, and there's a street thug who basically steals his dog and throws it and kills it in the most horrible way. And Frank, he doesn't see the murder of the dog, but he he sees that there's this thug harassing a homeless man, and he does nothing about it.
Yes. Yeah, but he comes to terms with that.
Yes.
He realizes that he was a veteran. I think that was part of it. It's like,
Yeah.
and if you understand who Frank is, his struggles were coming from, I think, as raw PTSD plot line you can make. I mean, he was dealing with demons. I mean, just, of his past and his
Yeah.
brothers, that he made a mistake, he lost some, I mean, all of that comes into play there. And yeah, he's like, and on top of that, he's still struggling with the loss of his family. He is just so broken because he lost his family to
Well,
evil.
let's talk about that. How did he lose his family?
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, from my perspective, it was something that I hate to say it, it sounds bad, but it was necessary to happen to make him the character that he is today. That's just
Yeah.
what it is.
Well, his family was murdered by a conglomerate of, well, if you follow the Marvel story,
Yeah.
it was, they kind of retcon it, so to speak, as we go along. But if you assume that the retcons are all canon, which I assume they are,
Yeah.
then it was a conglomeration of gangs and some like dirty cops
Yeah.
and people in the government, and maybe some
And
higher up
mob.
government officials, and
Yeah.
yeah, and the
Some
mob,
mobs. Yep.
who come together to say, look, we all agree that this guy's a problem, and they're out to kill him, but end up slaughtering his family at a
Yeah.
they were at a park where the kids are riding amusement park rides.
It was essentially this almost the same as the Thomas Jane movie, this Thomas Jane version.
Mm-hmm.
So same, but
Yeah.
but yeah. So look, I liken this episode to one of two movies that are kind of a guilty pleasure for me. The first one I'll say is, if you've ever seen, I believe it was 2008, the 2008 version of, it was called John Rambo. That one had probably one of the most, at least before this Punisher episode, one of the coolest, like just raw, destroying everything with a machine gun scenes I've ever seen in my life. You kind of want to go back and just watch that piece of the movie, several times. And a very special movie group, which we won't get into now, but it's definitely maybe a future topic, is John Wick. I absolutely love the John Wick character. I love everything about the storylines. It's a very cool mythology that they're still expanding on, from my understanding. But essentially, if everybody knows John Wick, which you probably should, because Keanu Reeves is a pretty awesome actor anyways, to just watch any of his movies, in my opinion. It started off with killing his dog. I mean, and you just, and he just went on a tear after that. So, take it for what it is, but that's what I like in this episode. That's what I like at this episode too. So,
yeah. And Frank, he's ex-Marine, for those of you
yes.
who want that background. So he's highly skilled, highly disciplined, but as some people who served in combat in our military have, he has some PTSD. And so we kind of, the next scene is we basically see him in his house. He's dealing with his demons through a lot of drinking, basically. And he's seeing some hallucinations of Karen Page. So Karen Page is a major character in Daredevil and the old Punisher show. And Karen was a love interest and is the current love interest of Daredevil, or Matt. And she was also a love interest of Punisher. And I'm starting to think that, now that I think about it, that both Karen Page and the night nurse, Rosario Dawson, they've got a lot of love interests that are intermingling there.
Right? Yeah.
That's a whole other discussion. But Karen, he starts seeing hallucinations of Karen and an old friend of his named Curtis.
Yeah. And really, after that, we see his character leave one struggle for another. He goes
Yeah.
back to his family. He's questioning life, basically. At this
Yeah.
point, he's questioning life. He sees all the chaos going out in the streets, and he's numb to it. And there is chaos going on in the streets, and he's numb to it. And he just walks on by, and he's just questioning things. So there's a hallucination that he has of his daughter, who's probably the most special person in his life besides his wife. And he just doesn't know how to handle it anymore. But then he's brought to his senses by that hallucination or whatever it may have been that manifested in his conscious.
Yeah.
But
he has the vision. He literally, as you said, when he goes back and revisits family, he literally revisits his family at the cemetery.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So fast forward, he decides to get up, wipe his tears, and he's confronted by an old enemy that he didn't realize was an enemy. Contrary to what he does, is basically makes enemies. And this person basically puts a major threat on him. And that's when the chaos begins, or the mayhem, I should say. That's when the mayhem
he's
begins.
confronted by the mother in Who's the Boss?
That's right. It is. That's right. It is the mother who's the boss. If you know what Who's the Boss is, it's an old sitcom back in that was the 80s. 80, maybe. Yeah.
Judith Light is putting the lowdown on the Punisher. And she plays a character called Ma Nucci.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so just a little bit of background on that. He basically slaughtered her whole family, the husband, the sons, everybody, because they were a part of something that, that affected him. So
they're one of the mob families that were part of the conglomeration that killed his family, who like, this guy has to go. And his family they weren't trying to kill his family. They just happened to be collateral damage.
So pretty much the rest of the episode plays out as it is. He's confronted by just countless people.
Well, she places a bounty on him.
Right. Yeah. They're trying to claim the bounty. He somehow, some way survives all of that and realizes again that this is all he has. This is all he is. This is what he's good at, basically. I think that's really what he comes to terms with. And he realizes that his family's not coming back, but they're with him, right? His buddies, his comrades are not coming back, but they're with him. And I think he carries that and he wears that. And I believe, like you said, Mike, he's doing what he believes is the right thing to do. And that's basically how they end the episode. He's standing there in his new suit, or an updated suit, which to me is very reminiscent of the very first comic that he's in. If you look at just go Google the, Amazing Spider-Man 129, you'll see him on the cover. It's exactly just kind of reminded me of that. And it's like that right there, to me is teeing up for the new Spider-Man movie. Literally.
So because now we get the gist of who this guy is as far as what he does, which is, I didn't actually look at the minute count, but it felt like a good solid 15 minutes of just assassins and bounty hunters coming after him one by one, and him just blowing them all away. And I would say, like an 80s action hero like Rambo, which again, I agree with you, there are the parallels, but let's be fair. Rambo and all those action movies came after the Punisher. He was kind of one of the OG he's, in my opinion, he's kind of the archetypal modern action hero.
Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't argue that at all. That's a good point. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens in the new Spider-Man movie when it comes out. I don't know. Is it July? Am I off base? June, July?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I apologize. I promise we're still fans, but I told you I'm trying not to pay attention to anything. I want to watch the movie when it comes out, period.
I'm the worst at knowing when things are going to happen. I know there's a Star Wars movie coming out, but
tomorrow, tonight.
Whenever I start seeing people review it online, that's when I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll go see the new Star Wars.
Right. Well, unfortunately, that's kind of what Star Wars has become, but that's another topic for another show. So
for sure.
But we'll see.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I say, but we'll see what happens. I truly believe he'll be just like in the comic. He'll be the antagonist to Spider-Man for a little bit, and maybe we'll see them hey, we're fighting the same enemies here. Maybe he'll have the same struggles that he has with Daredevil. Who knows? I think that's
Yeah.
essentially where the character's going to go, though.
Well,
So
kind of the end of that action sequence, to bring home your point about how his character arc resolves, is that there's a coffee shop that he likes to visit,
yes,
and there's a family in there, and there's a little girl that reminds him of his daughter,
yep,
and he basically saves their lives
yes,
uh, because all the assassins are just destroying the neighborhood.
yep,
And at the end, uh, basically the little girl. Well, first of all, let's just say that he takes care of the guy that was bothering the homeless man.
yes, he did,
Yeah,
and everybody
and,
else that got in his way.
and everybody else. But the little girl comes up and brings him a little paper flower, I think it was, that she made.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
And that is what made him like, you know what? I'm a hero.
Yeah.
And I protected these people. And had I acted in the first place, that that the veteran would still have his little dog, which was the
Yeah.
only thing he had in his life.
Yeah. 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 It was tough to watch some of those things, but yeah, we'll see. I once again thought it was good. Think it'll be fun to watch him in an actual Marvel cinematic, on the silver screen. So we'll see where that goes. But
yeah, so we know his background, we know who he is going into a brand new day. So yeah.
Speaking of silver screen, Mike,
yeah.
I know I had hit you up a while ago on what I consider to be a very underrated sci-fi movie that I still love to this day. It's got a multiple rewatch factor in my opinion. And a lot of it also has to do with the amazing soundtrack, by the way, which we're going to get into in just a minute. But I definitely wanted to add, you did have a chance to watch this movie, right? It's called, for the audience, it's called Oblivion. Yeah. Very underrated sci-fi film. I don't know how it did in the box office. I can't imagine it did great. Is a Tom Cruise movie, Morgan Freeman. So it had some really, really popular, good, obviously really popular actors in it. Really awesome storyline. I thought it was fantastic. I mean, watching it for the first time just blew me away. But what really made the movie so deep and why I connected to it so much was the soundtrack too. And I want to talk a little bit about the soundtrack, but I want to hear your take on the movie. Spoiler alert for people who have not watched it. It is a really good movie. I suggest watching it if you're into a kind of it's got drama, it's got romance, love, it's got conflict. It's sci-fi. It's dystopian a little bit. Well, I'd say a lot actually, but it's a really, really good film to watch. So what were your thoughts on it, Mike?
Loved it. Yeah, it was. I can't believe I never heard of it until you told me about it.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of people haven't.
Tom Cruise he doesn't disappoint me anyway. And anything that I've ever, if there's I like science fiction anyway. And then if I see Tom Cruise or Matt Damon in it, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's going to be good probably.
You're gonna watch it.
And I loved it. Yeah, it was what I would put in the category of hard science fiction.
Yep.
In that everything that's in there is something that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those movies where you don't know that there's a twist, that there's a major twist in it.
Yes.
And it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we're literally we're dealing with. I mean, to spoil the twist, unfortunately, you're dealing with artificial intelligence, and this is back in 2013, which AI was just something we were just chit chatting about, even though flash way back to Terminator, and all of that good stuff. It's not like that type of AI, but it was just a really good story. But just to give everybody kind of an idea of how the movie played out, it was based off of two main characters. It was Tom Cruise, and then he has basically I'm going to call him a dispatch person, which technically was we thought was a romance interest in the actual film. I don't really know how to explain it without just totally ruining the entire movie, but
it's hard to.
Yeah. Maybe I won't go that far into the movie, but just explain to the people that Tom Cruise and his character were under the understanding that what they were doing was necessary, because they were helping a planet it's Earth that was basically destroyed from a war. They basically were helping supply resources to a colony of humans that had to leave the Earth. And
Because of an
they,
alien attack
because of an
that
alien
had
invasion, yes.
destroyed the planet, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Made it uninhabitable.
Yeah. They beat, the humans actually won according to the story. The humans actually won. They had to nuke the planet though to do it,
Yeah.
So they thought they defeated the aliens, and there were a couple what they thought were aliens that were still, a few little factions here and there that they were easy to work with. But long story short, they were doing it as a mission. They were serving they call it the Tet. And the Tet is basically the where they were supplying all of the resources to, because they were going to eventually take them to I think it was a moon out in Jupiter or something, or one of Saturn's moons. Yeah. Maybe. But anyways,
it might have been Titan.
Long story short, the movie just totally twists. A lot of events happen, and Tom Cruise's character actually starts to have memories and flashbacks, and is like, why do I feel like I know some of these things? Why are they so familiar to me? But he doesn't remember them. And for the spoiler here, it turns out he was a clone. He was basically made by, he was cloned. And there were tons of them made, a lot of them. And there were still some surviving humans on the planet that ended up kind of keeping an eye on him, and then finally connecting with him and convincing him of the truth. But they let him go to go find out the truth for himself. And boy, did he find out the truth for himself. And, the movie basically, kind of culminates on, he ends up wanting to do the right thing to help the actual humans that are still alive, that everything else turns out was a lie, and he wants to help them out and do the right thing. And he realizes that, I'm a clone. And even though I still have feelings and I have these memories, I'm going to do the right thing. And then he ends up helping them defeat the bad guy, the Tet. Basically, he ends up destroying the Tet.
Yeah. And he finds out that he's a clone in a very cool way.
It's neat, right?
Yeah. And I will say that it's not, I said there was a twist, but it's fair. They laid all the breadcrumbs that, if you'd have paid attention to them, once the twist happens, you're like, oh, yeah.
It was done very well. It was done very, very well. I just, that's why I think it's so much fun to watch again, because it's like, wow, they really did connect that dot. They really did connect that dot. Mm-hmm. And so let me take it outside of the movie now, and let's talk a little bit about, because a lot of this stuff you said, it is theoretical science that really could happen, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about cloning for just a minute, because this is what fascinates me, right? He was a clone, one of millions, from what I understand. He apparently was an army of one. In other words, the Tet, this artificial intelligence, built millions of him, his body, his makeup, millions of him, and sent them out to fight the war with the humans that were actually still on the Earth.
Right.
But interestingly enough, why, Mike? Talk to me about this. Why did he have memories? How did those memories happen? Where did memories come from? He was a clone. How are memories cloned? Is that even possible?
I think for that to be possible, they wouldn't have done cloning in the way that we think of cloning. So to put cloning in perspective, every identical set of identical twins are technically clones of an original zygote. Now, there are different ways that can happen, and that would be a 3-hour discussion.
Science class.
Essentially, the most straightforward way is that you have a zygote that's literally one person, that first cell, and then or one potential future human, and then that cell, which would normally divide into two, and those two cells stay together to become a 2-cell stage of an embryo. Instead, those 2 cells split apart, and each one of them now starts growing as an embryo. So essentially, every pair of twins used to be the same person in that 1-cell stage. But there's no way that you could take, first of all, if we were going to do cloning today, the way we'd have to do it is take a cell from somebody's bone marrow or something that has stem cells in it, and then grow an identical body, which would
Right.
still go through developmental changes that might lead to differences. But they wouldn't have the same experiences or the same memories, to your
Right.
point. So, in order for that to happen, you'd have to have cloning that would literally make an exact duplicate of the person's brain. Now,
Right.
I said it's theoretically possible. I do think that's theoretically possible
Yeah.
because, but we certainly are nowhere near the technology
Exactly.
to do that.
Exactly. And so that's what was so fascinating about this. Even this artificial intelligence that was obviously very intelligent didn't realize what they were dealing with, because apparently they were traveling all over the universe, or this AI was
Yeah.
traveling all over the universe, just destroying races and planets, according to the theory in this. And it finally found Earth and made it to Earth and did the same thing, or basically tried to do the same thing, but the humans fought back. But they just didn't understand, because they were just doing their playbook that they do on every planet, and
Mhm.
it was working. It still was working, but
Yeah.
for some reason humans were resilient. And I'm just curious, my thought on it is, there's something to, you know the cells in the brain, neurological tissue, neurons themselves. There's still something in those cells that are a part of a thought or a memory or something. It's not the synapse, it's not those two specific neurons.
Right.
It's something to do with the cells of those neurons, that the memory is stored. Or to me, it is literally like a code. That's why. And eventually, as the human develops or grows, now mind you, he was a grown man already, which I think also kind of leads into my theory here. As he grew and developed, there were things that he would see, like the Statue of Liberty, or he would see that he saw this specific female, and that would generate the chemical neurotransmitters or whatever it is that those cells have to produce for the synapse. And that
Mhm.
automatically, just like, it basically cloned the neuron itself, or the neurons, the neuronal tissue, to cause that memory. And that's what I thought that's cool. And that would explain the very, very, very end, Mike. To me, it would explain the very end of the movie, where, because if you think about it, there were clones, and these clones of this same character, his name is Jack, they were in different sections of the world.
Yeah.
And he was called Tech 49, but he had an encounter with another tech called Tech
Mhm.
52, which was him. It was
Yeah.
himself. But Tech 49 sacrificed himself. But at the very end of the movie, Tech 52 found his way back to this cabin that Tech 49 had built. But
Mhm.
he started having memories of certain things. And I don't know, it was just really, really cool how
You
it
should
played out. I
have like,
recommend everybody to watch. Please watch this movie. It's
yeah.
just awesome.
But now that you're talking about this, I'm thinking that like we should have a segment on one of our shows where we discuss consciousness because
Yep.
it's fascinating, and we could use different ideas from TV shows or movies or comic books or whatever to talk about it. But
Yeah.
I have a lot to say on the subject. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I'm definitely up to do that, because I like, me, I like having those kinds of conversations, Mike. Matter of fact, we might have written something a little bit that
Maybe.
utilizes some of that. Yeah, maybe.
We, if you didn't know, Anthony and I have a lot of projects going on, which is why we
We do.
call it Many Worlds. Now we're
Yes.
doing an origin story here.
Yep.
So we call it Many Worlds because we've been in bands together for, I don't know, 15 years now, something like that.
Yep.
We've made a
That's
lot
right.
of music, and we've we've written two completed screenplays that are in competition. And we're not going to talk about all of the details, but
Yeah, yeah.
we've
We'll
written a
talk
couple
about that later.
screenplays. We're working on ideas for a third. We love TV. We love storytelling through TV. We like movies too, but the long-term format of television, of being able to tell stories, is ever since the 90s, when shows like the X-Files started having mythology arcs,
Yes.
and that led to, and Sopranos, which I never watched because I don't like those kind of shows. But
I watched it. Fantastic, but I'm Italian, so
yeah, I, it's too depressing to me because I know that stuff exists. But so, but that long term storytelling really lets you develop your characters and your story.
Yeah.
Not that movies don't, it's just not quite as much of our bag. Although we probably will write a movie at some point.
Someday. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we have some ideas to start there, but yeah, speaking of music, once again, the second really great piece about this movie that we were just talking about, Oblivion, is the soundtrack. And
Yeah,
soundtracks to me are something very, very, they're just very, very necessary and
yeah,
meaningful.
me too.
Soundtracks will make or break a movie. And in this case, so I urge everybody, you can look it up on YouTube. The band that essentially did the majority of the score and the soundtrack is called M83. You might know a couple of their songs. They're I think kind of like an electronic European rock band. They're pretty cool. I like them. Don't like everything, but I do like some of their tunes. Check them out. They're great. The Oblivion soundtrack is very, very cool. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about
Mhm.
soundtracks themselves,
Yeah,
Mike, just because they do play a major role in my life. As I've said maybe in I think our first episode, I utilize soundtracks when I'm at work and I'm doing things and I have to think deeply and critical thinking and all that. I can't have a lot of songs with vocals and words and all that stuff and
right.
in the background. So I turn soundtracks on, and I'll tell you what, if I'm not listening to any type of classical music, which is another subject in itself, it's incredible. It's incredible classical music. Baroque is incredible, but movie
Same.
soundtracks are definitely one that I absolutely love. So, and I don't know if you have any
Yeah,
favorites that you want to talk about, Mike, but Oblivion is definitely one. It's a great soundtrack.
I do. And if go to listen to M83 or Oblivion soundtrack, it's it's really a callback to 80s electronica, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
in a similar vein, I would say to Stranger Things,
yeah,
uh, but it's a little bit more. It's different. I mean, the guy who writes it has a different style, but it's very electronica. I enjoyed that part of it very much. I like all kinds of, and there are other artists who don't do the traditional orchestral score like Vangelis and people like that.
yeah.
But I love the orchestral stuff too, and I love uh, movies with pop or rock soundtracks. It's all good.
Yes,
And so, to your point, so I have a weird hobby, and it probably has a name, but I don't know what the name is, which
yeah.
is that I reconstruct movie soundtracks that were never released in a proper form.
Which I still have not heard any of this yet. So I cannot wait to get a copy of one that I know you're going to talk about that I just heard about that I'm interested to hearing this.
Yeah. So there are some movies that had amazing soundtracks that they might have released a version of the soundtrack, but they edited the songs or left a bunch of songs out. Obviously, with orchestral score, you'd have to release probably a double disc version back in the CD days
Yeah.
because it's a lot of little snippets of orchestral pieces and stuff. And so examples of these. And let me start off with the one that blows my mind that there
Yeah.
was never an official release for, which was Highlander, a movie I know that both of us love.
Yes.
The original Highlander had a soundtrack, it had an orchestral score, um, which, and I should know this since I'm making a
With
big deal about it,
with
but what's that?
yeah, with a very famous rock band that people will know.
Yeah, Queen. Oh yeah, it was Michael Kamen, the same guy that did the strings for Pink Floyd's The Wall,
Yeah.
and Metallica live with Symphony. That guy, the amazing guy. He composed the orchestral stuff, and then Queen wrote a bunch of rock songs for it, it was heavy Queen,
Yes.
right? Mostly there were a couple of really cool ballads, but it was mostly that kind of heavy metal Queen, like "Keep Yourself Alive" and that kind of stuff. Um, that song's not on it, but they did not release an official accurate soundtrack or any soundtrack to my knowledge in the United States. They
Yeah.
did release a couple versions of the orchestral one in Europe, and there was, I should have brought this in here, a Highlander special edition that came in a tin box
Yeah.
that included 4 of the Queen songs from the movie
On the movie.
that had that were the unedited versions. Okay, so fast forward. Queen releases an album in the 80s called A Kind of Magic. I believe, if I recall the story right, they were a little bit ticked off that they didn't release a soundtrack version. So they took a lot of those songs and put them on this A Kind of Magic. And so songs like Hammer to Fall and Princes of the Universe and things like that,
Yes.
which was
Yes.
kind of the main theme, Princes of the Universe of Highlander.
People
And
will recognize it if they hear it. They will
yeah,
recognize it.
here
Probably
we
don't even
are,
realize it's from the
Princes
Highlander.
of the Universe, yeah.
Yep.
And so they, but it also contains other songs that weren't on in the movie, and the ones that they did include, like A Kind of Magic, and One Vision, were edited mightily to fit their regular release album. So that drives me nuts because I want to hear the original soundtrack. So I
Yep.
go back through and I get the original DVD and literally separate out the musical track to get anything that I can't get from a release somewhere.
Yep.
And then I buy up every release that I can find from Europe and Germany. And well, I know Germany's in Europe, but I find all these releases and then create a constructed soundtrack that is accurate to the movie. There's only one out of there that I can find no decent release of and no full-length version of, and that's Queen's version of Frank Sinatra's New York, New York, or is that
Oh
the name of
no.
that song? And because in the movie, I believe it was the villain who's driving along and he turns on the radio, and it's the
Yes.
Queen version of that song.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Corgan was the name of the villain, and so I can't find that anywhere. I did take the audio snippet from the radio from that car scene and put it on my reconstructed soundtrack, but
Yeah.
it's the best I can do. Another one is Back to the Future. Now,
Yeah.
yes, I know that there was an official soundtrack released of that.
There was. I have it.
Yeah. And it's awesome, okay, but it's certainly not complete. And many of the things on there, and I think that was Alan Silvestri who did the orchestration on that. So I tracked down. They did release in various places the orchestral score. Again, I think it's one of those things you have to buy it from Germany or something. And so I found the orchestral score. Unfortunately, there were at least 2 completely different versions of the orchestral score released.
Right.
So I had to listen to the movie and figure out which ones were actually used. And then, but things that really ticked me off, aside from the fact that they don't include a lot of songs, especially like from the dance and stuff, but
Right.
they don't include the version of Johnny Be Good
Right.
that was in the movie.
Which is the absolute, that is the, as a kid growing up watching that movie, that is the scene you waited for. I mean, there was just something so cool about that scene. I don't know, who cares about the time machine going in and out, blah, blah. Didn't care about that. It was the Johnny Be Good scene when he's up there just rocking it out to a class that has never heard anything like that before. Hey, Marvin.
Right. Yeah.
Remember that sound you were looking for?
It's the one that at the end, he goes nuts and starts playing an Eddie Van Halen-esque
rock solo,
rock guitar solo, which didn't exist until, you could argue that Ritchie Blackmore started doing that with Deep Purple in the early 70s, but that's at least 15, 20 years out at that point. And certainly it wasn't mainstream until Van Halen did it in the late 70s. And so he goes nuts on his guitar solo, and he's on the floor, he's sliding around, he's on his back, and then he looks up and even the band stopped playing because they're like, "What's this guy? Is he having a seizure?"
Here?
And everybody in the dance floors just stopped. And they're mortified, frankly.
Right.
And then he gets up and says, that I guess I forgot the exact words, I should know, but I guess you're not
Yeah. I guess your kids
ready
aren't ready
for
for that
this.
yet. Or
Your kids
wait,
are,
I guess you're not ready for this yet, but your
yeah,
kids will love it or
kids are gonna
something.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. But
And
your kids are gonna love it. It's beautiful.
so if you listen to the soundtrack version, they have Johnny B. Good uh, without the guitar solo ending the way it does.
Which is no
Which
fun.
so the producers are like, well, we need this to sound like a regular song on the album. No,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, producers of the album. I want the original. So I edited together the one from the album, which starts off pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And I put in the snippet where he's like, it's a blues, what do you say? It's a blues licking B
Blues riff
minor
and
or something
B, I
like
think.
blues riff and B. Try to keep up, or watch me for the changes. Yeah.
Right. Watch me. Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I put that in there, and then it ends like it's supposed to end. But then the other thing that drives me nuts, and this didn't exist anywhere,
Yeah.
was because I could just take that guitar solo off the DVD
Yeah.
sound layer,
Yeah.
music layer. But what didn't exist anywhere was the end of Earth Angel. And so
Yeah.
at the end of Earth Angel, it's a song from the 50s, but
It's a good
what
song.
happens is that's when Marty's mom and dad finally kiss in the dance, and he looks
Yes.
at his picture and he's been restored.
Right.
That's when the timeline is set back up correctly.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we should talk about timelines and how they differ in different movies, because as we know in the Avengers, Back to the Future, as the Hulk
Right.
said, that's not how it works.
Right.
But in this, but anyway, he restores the timeline, and the parents kiss during that song. But when they kiss in the movie, there's not just the rock instrumentation, but the strings come in and just swell, and
Yes.
it fades from being a rock song into a grand orchestral suite
Yeah.
with them kissing in a romantic, like almost 1920s or 30s movie kind of way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're just going to end it with regular guitar and drums and stuff. So no, 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 no. So what I did find was that they had the orchestral music on a different release of one of those orchestral releases, but without the rock song.
So it
And the
was
rock song
produced.
without the orchestral music. So I
Yeah.
had to edit the two together. It took me all day, but I did it.
Well, I just think that's cool. I think it's cool that you even that's a hobby of yours, that you do that. Because personally, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
I guess I just didn't pay attention. But I have been, aware that is something that happens, because I don't know if anybody has ever gone, watched a movie and said, "Oh man, this movie's awesome. I just want to buy the soundtrack to this movie." And then you get the soundtrack, and that one song that you heard on the movie that you just love is not on the
Right.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the worst.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
It's like I bought,
And
I
I mean,
spent
there are
15
lots
bucks
of
on a CD.
yeah. I mean, there are lots of movies that do that. Like Saturday Night Fever originally didn't contain all the songs, but that one's easy. You just make a playlist with all the songs from those popular artists.
Totally easy.
No,
Yeah.
no muss, no fuss. I don't worry about that kind of. I mean, I make those, but that's like 5 minutes. But another one is Xanadu. If you like,
Yeah.
I'm the biggest ELO fan.
So,
I mean, there is. I mean, I
is
know
that
there.
Olivia Newton-John? Olivia Newton-John was in that, right?
Yeah, Living in
Is that right?
John. Yeah, and Jeff Lynne, who wrote all the songs, almost all the songs for ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, has said that Xanadu was his favorite song he's ever written.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a cool, it's
And
an upbeat poppy song. It is. I mean,
yeah,
I'm neither here nor there on
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I like
So
ELO though.
I love the soundtrack. It's not just ELO. It's got the Tubes and a bunch of other bands in it. And it's the cheesiest 80s movie you'll ever watch. It's about roller
Totally.
skating, for
Is.
goodness sake. But I've restored that, but I don't, it's not a big deal, because there's literally a society of people who restore Xanadu as a soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not the only one who does this.
Well, I think it's neat. I grew up with something like that my dad did. He got into when he was in school, he got in with a friend that he basically, I don't know if he was just restoring the decades. I'll have to talk to him a little bit more in depth about it, but he basically like almost did a full music anthology for certain decades
Yeah.
of it's amazing. It's amazing, and they're all on cassette tapes. I still have them. I've got them all. Of course, good luck trying to find a cassette player. I have some because I
I have
still
one.
have some of that equipment.
I
But
have a professional one
yeah,
right here for my
but it's pretty cool. So I love that. I love that you do that. It's essentially my dad and them were making mixtapes before mixtapes were even a thing, right? And it sounds like you're essentially kind of doing that with some of these soundtracks. But I'll tell you, there's nothing better than a movie soundtrack, really. If you
Well,
just want to,
quick,
you
well,
want to be
tell me
taken.
your top five. Tell me what are your
Yeah,
top
yeah,
five
yeah.
orchestral soundtracks.
So let just preface it with saying the reason why they're just so amazing is because they literally can still. So when you watch a movie, I don't know if people realize that it's usually the music that's really pulling you into the movie and drawing you into the movie. Now that's a theory of mine. I mean, obviously the world building and the characters, you relate to them as well, and they draw you in. But I really think the music is what really draws you into the
I
movie.
agree.
And the reason why I base my theory on that is because when you're not watching the movie, but you listen to the soundtrack, you're taken, like, for instance, the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. I mean, the Lord of the Rings movies. Thank you, Peter Jackson, for doing this. Thank you so very much for doing this. What a great part of my youth and even my adulthood now. And then, of course, the soundtracks. I listen to those and they take me right back to Middle Earth, right back to Middle Earth. So I'm definitely going to say Lord of the Rings by far, hands down. Harry Potter, yes. Yeah, that's going to be number one for sure. I'm going to say Harry Potter. As you can see, my little Harry Potter stuff behind me. There's nothing more thrilling to me than to just hear that little, I don't know what it is, the little bells at the very beginning, and it right away. It's Harry Potter when you just hear that. Dun, 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 it's unmistakable. That right there. And then just the entire soundtrack is great through the movies because they add new songs as the movies progress, but the theme's still there. There's different variations. So that one's good. Obviously the Oblivion soundtrack is definitely going to be another good one. And then, I have some other go-tos. I have way more than 5, by the way. So I'm not really doing a good service here, but I'm just going to mention a couple other ones that really are awesome.
As soon as you want. I just
yeah, right. I don't want to keep everybody here all night because we are getting a little bit over our time here. But it has been a great conversation, Mike. I'll finish it up with Jurassic Park. The Jurassic Park, the first movie, the original Jurassic Park. That soundtrack is awesome. So listen to grab that one, and then believe it or not, the one thing about growing up in the 80s, I watched a lot of cartoons growing up because cartoons were awesome. I won't get into Saturday morning cartoons. I won't get into Disney afternoons after school. But I won't get into early morning before you go to school, breakfast cartoons. I mean, they were everywhere. Cartoons were the greatest. I grew up with a thing called Transformers behind me. The new Transformers movies, the Michael Bay, the first movie, that when the Transformers that I knew and loved came to life, that soundtrack is awesome. And I think his name is Steve Jablonsky or something like that. If I'm not mistaken, very Polish name. Love it. Awesome soundtrack. And so I'll probably round it out there. So many more, by the way, but I'll probably round it out there. So
yeah, I'd say my top would probably be the original trilogy Star Wars, especially Empire Strikes Back and the first movie. Yep. I listen to those all the time. And I actually had the 2-record set of Empire Strikes Back when I was a kid of the orchestral score.
And that's cool. You don't have those anymore?
I might. This one had Darth Vader's helmet on it, and the black field of stars was all it had, if I recall. And then number 2 for me would be Lord of the Rings. I listen to that a lot. Number 3, not really a movie soundtrack, but the Battlestar Galactica, the reimagined version.
Yeah,
Bear McCreary is a freaking genius. Yeah. That gets me through a lot of days at work. And then I'd have to go with probably Jurassic Park is hard to beat. Agreed. I'll never look at movie soundtracks the same way again.
It's good. It's really good.
It's like I won't look at birds the same way again.
It's epic adventure music. It's up there with Lord of the Rings. It's up there with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And I hate to pick another Peter Jackson, but The Hobbit's pretty awesome too. Its soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, soundtracks are important once again. I
Yeah.
utilize them not only for, kind of relaxing, calming, so I can focus when I'm working. But once again, if I just want to escape and I don't have the TV in front of me, or if I don't want to sit and watch the entire movie because I just don't have time, I just pop
Mhm.
on a soundtrack, and it literally will take you there. And if you don't believe me, just try it. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
Remember one of your favorite movies growing up or something, and just look up the soundtrack and listen to it. And I bet you anything, it'll take you through the entire movie. You'll just remember it
Right.
like you're
Yeah.
watching it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
One last one I did want to bring up that's fun, that kind of goes along with the theme, is you cannot beat the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtracks. I mean, you just
Oh yeah.
can't. Those are
It's
so much
for sure.
fun. How fun would it, they not only made really fun, cool movies, but they put soundtracks that were just awesome. And it really made the movie. It set the tone of the movie. Every scene was
Yeah.
set by an awesome song. So those were a lot of fun. A
And
lot of fun.
this might be another episode, but I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I really do, and I love the team they assembled, and that is a modern team in the
Yep.
comic books. But many, many years in the future, they should do a Marvel future storyline,
Yeah.
because the original Guardians of the Galaxy, which they kind of had Sylvester Stallone and a few people kind of mimic that team, but really didn't pull it off the way they should.
Yeah.
Supposed to be many, hundreds of years in the future, the original team of the Guardians of the Galaxy, with Vance Astro, with Charlie 27, with
Yeah.
Nikki with the flaming hair,
Yeah.
with Martinex, the diamond guy,
Yep.
and then we have the original Yondu. So he could be an descendant from the Yondu we know,
Yeah.
because they're very, very, very different. The Yondu played
Oh yeah.
by uh,
Yeah.
what's his name?
I know, very
Uh,
famous, but we can never remember his
yeah,
name. He's in a
the
lot of
guy.
stuff.
He was on Walking Dead too, but
Yeah.
very, very different. The one from the comic books is like very spiritual and
Yeah.
very like, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, no,
anyway,
that would,
yeah,
yeah. I was just gonna say it'd be fun to do that, because and they have every excuse to be able to do it now because of the multiverse stuff. I
yeah,
don't know how far we're gonna continue to go with the multiverse stuff. I kind of feel like right now it's been kind of a flop just a little bit. It just really hasn't been as
mhm,
exciting as it could be. I still think they can course correct and change that. That would be one fun thing to have. It would be a lot of fun. Like, hey, the original Guardians, like, oh, that would be cool. That would be
yeah.
cool.
Well, I think that Marvel's going to correct that course, and I think they've started to do that, because
Yeah,
there was changes at the top, and
I know.
basically there was a person that came in who had the say so, who said, these are a licensed print money. He didn't. This is not a quote, but basically, these movies are licensed print money. Make as many movies and TV shows as you can, as fast as you can, and with the same VFX budget.
Yep. Yep.
And
No.
Kevin Feige was like, oh, okay, and I think now that he's more back in control of the quality of it.
Yep. Well, Mike, it's been another great show, sir. I'm not going
Yeah.
tonight, but I will try to go see the new Star Wars movie. Yes, there is a Star Wars movie
Is it
that
out
is
tonight?
opening this weekend. Yeah, the Mandalorian and Grogu. Look, I don't have high hopes, but I don't have low hopes either. I'm just gonna go and hopefully enjoy just another fun Star Wars movie, even if it's
Uh,
terrible. Hopefully, we'll get a couple hat tips for some, historical fans, and we'll have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So
my
I'm looking
hopes are
forward to that.
basically at where they were when I saw the Solo movie, the
Right.
Star Wars.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
oh,
Yeah.
well,
Look.
it's Star Wars.
Yeah, we're not in the times where we literally, and this, we would go stand in line as early as we can, right out of school. We'd go get in line with our, waiting to get a ticket to
Yeah,
get in. Because not only did you want to get a ticket to go see the movie, so you had to be in line, you also wanted great seats. And that was the big challenge back in the day. So now, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Plus, we're just not really there.
yeah.
Star Wars movies don't draw me in like that
Oh.
anymore. But
Say
we'll,
what you will about the prequel trilogy, man. When you saw that, you were like, "That is a Star Wars movie."
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
no. I agree. So
Yeah,
anyways, good stuff. Maybe we'll pick back up on that. We could probably talk about that a little bit next week. So
yeah. And I'm a prequels fan, so yeah,
yep. Hey,
yeah,
there you go. You got a prequels fan there. Yep.
yeah.
So
All right.
definitely
Well, it's been fun.
excellent. No, I appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah.
Another good episode. Episode 3 coming to a close. Thanks everybody for watching, and
Thank
I
you.
guess we'll look to see you all next week.
See you next week. Bye bye.